The talks in Oman between the United States and Iran have concluded. Whether this is just the first stage of more rounds to come, or whether it was a one-off, only time is going to tell. You may recall that in the June of 2025 attack, we had 5 rounds in, and then as the 6th was planned, that's when the United States attacked. If anything like that's going to happen, who can say? But at least we can say that one round is finished here, and at least from the Iranian side, they have some satisfaction that there was an acceptable outcome for that. We've yet to see an official reaction from the United States. But one thing we can see around these talks is there is a profound and, in my view, alarming series of arrogance and hubris on the American side, and it's shocking detachment from reality, and in one case, a shocking admission of the truth. I'm not sure it was intentional, but man, did it ever get my eyes open. A lot to unpack here today, and things that we need to know. We are unintimidated and uncompromised to bring you the truth. And folks, you've got one today that must be seen to really understand where we are in this situation and give us an idea of where we may be going next. First of all, let's take a look. The Iranian Foreign Minister Arakchi, following these talks, posted this on Truth Social. That's the second one, Gary. I want to go with the one he said first. The one he just said about just minutes ago, actually, I think is when it was published with his Truth Social. He was saying that after he came out of these meetings, we'll get that up there in just a second. And here it comes. There it is. Yeah, there we go. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said overall it was a good opening to negotiations. Decisions regarding how the talks will continue will be made in the respective capitals. It was agreed that the negotiations will continue. I do not want to judge prematurely, but if the course of the talks continues in this manner, it will be possible to reach an agreed framework. After 8 turbulent months, the dialogue process has begun, and the main challenge is the lack of trust. So there is Arakchi saying, listen, if the talks continue like this, there's some possibility and some hope. Now, in the hours before this meeting, he also had something on Truth Social that where he was saying what he hoped to get out of it. He said, Iran enters diplomacy with eyes open and a steady memory of the past year. We engage in good faith and stand firm on our rights. Commitments need to be honored. Equal standing, mutual respect, and mutual interest are not rhetoric. They are a must and the pillars of a durable agreement. So he was saying ahead of this that we have to be respected, and it has to be mutual respect and mutual honor. But our eyes are wide open of all the things that have happened in the past 12 months. Other Iranian officials have said our eyes are open to everything that's happened since 2015. Going all the way back to everything from the Obama, the first Trump administration, all the things that have happened since then, and their eyes are open on that. And then he makes a hopeful statement here. Now, I'm guessing that this is probably a tactical move by Arakchi to say, hey, we're totally willing to have a negotiation here. We're willing to compromise on some major issues. He very carefully did not say which ones those were. You may recall that we went into this discussion talking that the United States said has to be the missile program has to be on the table, the proxies have to be on the table, and zero enrichment have to be on the table. And the Iranians said, well, we'll talk about the enrichment issue to some degree. That's what they said coming in there. And so I think that Iranians are trying to position themselves in the public relations battle that's going on with all this to say, hey, we're reasonable. And hey, I think that as long as we keep getting more rounds of talks, we'll have a possibility of having a good outcome. So he wants to signal to the world that the Iranian side, for our part, is willing to be reasonable. We're respecting the United States. We're looking for mutual benefit, but our rights also have to be considered. So that if the United States then ignores all of that, and that's why I said I'm looking very carefully to see if the United States makes any comments. And Gary, if you could kind of be keeping one eye on the news, if they say anything while we're still in the air here from the U.S. side, any kind of official response, we'll throw that up to you. But right now, I think the U.S. is trying to figure out how they want to react. Well, if you look at how we were reacting heading into it, and if the Iranian side was looking for a mutual respect and mutual admiration society, so to speak, Caroline Leavitt wasn't seen to be on that sheet of music.
Diplomacy moving forward. The president has obviously been quite clear in his demands of the Iranian regime. Zero nuclear capability is something he's been very explicit about, and he wants to see if a deal can be struck. And while these negotiations are taking place, I would remind the Iranian regime that the president has many options at his disposal aside from diplomacy as the commander-in-chief of the most powerful military in the history of the world.
So look, all we're saying is we're going to give you a series of requirements. You have the option to, through negotiations, to accept what we say, or we're going to have the most powerful military in the history of the world that's going to rain fire, death, and destruction on your head. But if you want to negotiate, that's cool. We're fine with that too. So not very subtle in that, but that's what she said there. Now, it wasn't just the Iranians who probably were upset about that and didn't have any good things to say about it. I'm sure they were gritting their teeth. They didn't say anything publicly, but you know that they certainly didn't like that. That did not meet the negotiate or the terms of let's have mutual respect. I mean, it sounded like I've got a baseball bat over your head, and either you do what I say or I'm going to bring it down. That's kind of the gist there. Well, someone else wasn't very happy with the fact that they're talking at all. In fact, some people are saying, don't hold the baseball bat up there. Don't even talk. Just start wailing away. And that is Brother Jack Keane.
I don't agree with the overture in these negotiations. And the reason is I don't think we should do anything that extends the life of this regime. And negotiated settlement, even on terms favorable to us, would grant them sanction relief. And it does what? It recovers the regime. That means we're going to deal with these guys, what, another 10 years or so? And all the suffering that they've caused? We have an historic opportunity here, combined with Israel and the United States, to finish these guys once and for all. And I think that is the much preferred option. I believe the president will eventually come to that decision if he's not already there. In his own mind, he just wants to see what's going to happen with these negotiations.
So a couple of things that deserve to be talked about. That was last night. Around the same time that Caroline Leavitt was making her comment. So you see literally Jack Keane is pleading with the president, don't have any negotiations. And he said two things that I think are really noteworthy. Number one, he just said this is a historic opportunity. Because, and let me put that in context and explain what that means, is that there have been people who have been lusting for war with Iran for decades. But the environment was such that there was no way anybody was going to step into that case, whether it was Iran or Israel or the United States, because the global body politic, so to speak, even in the West, even in the United States, was not willing to accept that. And the negative look from the rest of the world would have been so strong that it was a step too far. And there would have been the real possibility of major global sanctions against Israel and the United States. People would have pushed back too hard. It was just too far to go. Well, because of all the events that have happened since 10/7/2023 and all the genocide issues and the slaughter of so many people in the Palestinian, and the fact that, you know, the global body politic has become basically numb to anything that's happening over there, anything the Israeli side do, anything the United States has done. And this again started in bits and pieces with the destruction of the Iranian embassy in Syria, with the assassination of Hania in the capital city of Tehran during a presidential inauguration. They keep stepping up and shocking things, and they just shock a little bit more and a little bit more. And then literally there's nothing that can't be done. No matter how many people have been killed in the Gaza Strip, how many people are killed in the West Bank, how much territory is wiped from the face of the earth in the Gaza Strip, nothing shocks anymore. So now then, and because there's been a couple of rounds already of engagements between Iran and Israel, people are just numb to it. So this is the golden opportunity in Jack Keane's mind to where you can take the final step to militarily destroy Iran, and you're not going to have this shock from the body politic around the world because everybody's kind of numb to it. So he thinks. So he believes that militarily you can do that. And so he is adamant that that's what we should be doing. And you've heard Naftali Bennett, former Israeli prime minister, many times we've shown on this show where that's exactly what he said. Once in a 50-year opportunity. Here we go. We want to get it done. So now Keane is worried that on the cusp of having this grand opportunity, that diplomacy might enter into the way and get in the way of it and actually prevent this golden opportunity as he sees it. And all of a sudden, they may lose it. And then we're left with, as he said, you're just sustaining the regime and keeping it going on there. And he says, we don't want that. We only want the destruction and the death of all of these people and the wiping out of the Iranian regime, period. And who cares what comes next for these people? They just want it to, and they don't care about the consequences. Or so we think. Now, one other thing that's really important here. I want to introduce this here because this is very, very important. All the Western audience needs to understand what's I'm about to explain to you right now. He said this part of the reason he wants to get rid of the regime is because of all the suffering these guys have caused. So he said, these guys have caused. Well, that harkens back to something that President Trump had been saying in January, and specifically on a True Social on the 13th of January. He said, Iranian patriots, keep protesting, take over your institutions, save the names of the killers and abusers. They will pay a big price. I have canceled all meetings with Iranian officials until the senseless killing of protesters stops. Help is on its way. Mega President Donald J. Trump. So he was saying, and he said that his red lines, this, how dare the Iranian regime kill all of these protesters, because they're just protesting because they want a better way of life. That was the gist. Lindsey Graham jumped all over that. And he continues to say, even as recently as a couple of days ago, that he keeps putting back up in Trump's face, you said help is on its way because of those poor protesters that are getting hit. You keep seeing that theme over and over. People keep mentioning those poor protesters, and the regime is just doing all this awful stuff to it. Well, as it turns out, in Senate testimony, I believe it was just yesterday, Scott Bessent, I don't know if inadvertently, if he didn't realize what he was saying, but he pulled the covers back on exactly why those protesters were protesting in December.
The Treasury, and what we have done is created a dollar shortage in the country. At a speech at the Economic Club of New York in March, I outlined the strategy. It came to a swift and I would say grand culmination in December, when one of the largest banks in Iran went under. There was a run on the bank. The central bank had to print money. The Iranian currency went into free fall. Inflation exploded. And hence, we have seen the Iranian people out on the street. We will continue monitoring all the partners, all the Iranian partners.
Don't miss what he just admitted right there. This was a long planned operation. So we went in there, and this was timed when President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu met at Mar-a-Lago on the 28th of December of last year. That's when this was all done. And it was an intentional thing. We crashed their economy. We debased their currency so that then they crashed in the banks, took their dollars, as I understand it, for the intent purpose of crashing making their real worth nothing. And so that means people can't buy enough food. They can't pay their bills. All those kinds of things. That was our express intent and desire and operation. And he even said so that the people would rise up and protest. And then when they did, then we had, according to Mike Pompeo, he said that at least the Mossad was actually on the ground there. You may have seen this post he made. Happy New Year to every Iranian in the streets. Also, every Mossad agent walking beside them, he said on our next post that evening. So he's flat out saying it is. Apparently, Israeli press openly admitted the same thing. So you can imagine that possibly MI6, the CIA, I can't imagine that Mossad would have been doing this by themselves, especially when you see Bessent talking about how our economic coercion was at work there. I'm sure that we were also on the street. You've seen that 40,000 Starlink satellite terminals were discovered. So we had been sending in arms, weapons, ammunition, communications devices, etc. Mossad agents, probably CIA, MI6, all trying to stir this up. Everything designed to cause the people to rise up. Now, there is an organic and an indigenous hatred of the Mullah regime inside of Iran, has been for decades. They are definitely against them, and they don't like them at all, many of them. But this sought, Our intent was to use the Iranian people, to use the discomfort they had to put it on flames and on steroids, give it fuel so that they would rise up. And then we would use all of this heartfelt language on those poor protesters that we stirred up. And then Trump said, yeah, keep going. Well, the problem is that the Iranian regime put the boots on their necks and crushed it in a methodical way, brutal way. Even according to the Iranians, they say 3,000 people ended up being killed and 500 security forces were also killed. Some claims it could be 10 times that number. I don't know the truth. No, I don't think anybody really does. I don't think anybody in the West actually cares what the truth was. They're looking for a narrative, and they're fine with a lot of the bloodied bodies of Iranian people to be the props for that. They had no problem with that whatsoever. The deaths and the lives of these people mean nothing to any of these people because their lust is to destroy Iran, whatever the cost. And if that's Iranian people, then that's fine. They'll use that. And if that doesn't work, though, they're going to go to plan B. And that's where we are here. So now I showed you Jack Keane last night, lamenting about any of these negotiations and saying, well, Trump probably just wants to see what they have to say, which is kind of weird. That doesn't make any sense anyway, if you don't want to have negotiations, unless, of course, this is just to buy time to build up a little bit more combat power before you're ready to strike. But today, Keane was even more angry than he was last night. He repeated some of the statements, and this is, again, just barely an hour and a half or so ago this morning on Fox and Friends. And he said a lot of the same things, about we shouldn't talk to him and we should, get rid of him. And then he says this. He was actually asked by the anchor a pretty fair question. So good on Fox for that. They asked him a fair question. Do we have a plan for what comes next?
Is there a plan out there that you think that could take down the IRGC and the Ayatollah and not result in chaos on the streets?
There is no doubt in my mind that there's an absolute plan that we can execute to take down the civilian and military leadership of Iran, the entire IRGC infrastructure that sustains them, their defense industrial base that helps sustain them, the leaders of the militias and the infrastructure that's out there repressing the people, take down dramatically their entire rocket and ballistic missile program and do it comprehensively that would deny them to have holistic retaliation attacks on the United States bases or on Israel. And certainly whatever attempt they're making at recovering a nuclear program, we can deal with all of that.
Oh my God. I was stunned when I heard that. So you see on the chyron there in the lower, Jack Keane, retired 4-star general, said on the screen right there. So when people read that, regular people, and again, this is all in information warfare activities here. This is designed to misinform and to deceive the Western public, the United States people. That's what this is designed. Make sure you're clear on this. These kinds of statements, and we showed you Rebecca Grant a couple of days ago talking about this massive military force that's going out there. So like, wow, we got this great stuff. And the most, as Caroline Levitt said, the most powerful military in the history of the world and all this. A lot of people keep saying this over and over. This is designed to make you think that we have to go to war with them, and in this particular case, that we can succeed. And I cannot just tell you how strongly what he just said there is a humiliation and shame for somebody who used to be a 4-star general, because it is either a bald-faced lie, something that he knows is grotesquely inaccurate, or he's more incompetent than I've ever given him credit for. I don't know which it is. It's one of those two things, though, because let's just go down the list here. He said, we have a plan. The guy asked a good question. Do we have a plan for what comes next? Do we have a plan for how to get this done, according to what you're saying? He said, we have the capacity to destroy the civilian and the military leadership of Iran, the entire IRGC, their armed forces, their defense industrial base, the militias, to take down dramatically their entire rocket facility so that we can prevent them from attacking a direct retaliatory attack against the United States bases in the region or Israel, and to knock out their nuclear program. You have no idea how much combat power it would take to do that. What he described there is an absolute full-on, full-scale war that you would have to have a massive invasion force. You would have to have a Navy that is completely restocked and has the ability to sustain combat operations for a long time. An Air Force that's going to have the capability hit from multiple directions, a rocket force that's able to fire lots of offensive missiles over a sustained period of time, and of course a defensive missile case to intercept the expected retaliation that's going to come from that. What he's talking about there, he laid out a campaign plan that is a full-scale war, not a strike, not something we can happen. This fantasy that you can just push a button and fire a few missiles and destroy all that stuff, and that's going to be it, is just malpractice. It is malpractice to the highest degree. And I worry that President Trump listens to that and believes it. If he believes what Jack Keane is saying here, and you've got to know that there are plenty of other people that are saying the same thing in his ear, probably. Definitely those who desire to have this lust satisfied, their bloodlust satisfied, to see more Iranian people destroyed and the regime destroyed. They are repeating this over and over. I can't imagine that Keane's going to be the only one. And there is no truth to this whatsoever. I mean, the amount of combat power we have on the ground, number one, there is one aircraft carrier strike group, one. There's a couple of other ships, and there's a little bit more missile firepower in the region. But those things, as we saw, Commodore Steve Jeremy, naval combat veteran from the Falklands War, who's done these kinds of operations, said that he has done analysis specifically on the U.S. capacity here. And he says you can get maybe 5 days of high-intensity offensive operations out of this combined firepower that we have here. Doug McGregor on our show said he thinks maybe they can get 10 days. Okay, 5 or 10 days. We'll go with the longest one. You got 10 days of high-intensity warfare. That's offensive warfare. And then what? You don't think that Iran knows this? You don't think that they understand because of the rounds that they had in 2024 and then the round in June of 2025, that they have not studiously paid attention and now have taken plenty of opportunities in the last half year or so to disperse their combat power, to have continuity of government plans, to have commanders that, once one taken out, the next one's going to come in, that they have their rocket forces spread all the way out in hardened and protective containers, most of which are underground, the production capacity underground, away from our missiles. You don't think that they're aware of that. You don't think that they paid any attention to what's happening or what happened in the Red Sea with the Houthis. The decade of time that the Saudi Arabia, with help from the United States, was unable to quell the Houthis with all kinds of firepower, air power and missile power. They never brought them to their heel. We didn't do it, but the Biden administration wasn't able to do it. The Trump administration wasn't able to do it. Just the Houthis. And to this day, they are still viable. They sucked down lots of missiles. Lots of them were killed. Lots of damage was done, but they have remained viable. And now you want to say that a country that is, whatever it is, 3 or 4 times bigger than Iraq, 3 or 4 times bigger than Iraq, somewhere between 80 and 90 million population. All this time they've had to prepare and train. Apparently, lots of information or lots of help has come from Russia and China in some form. Lots of plane loads of things have come in. Technology, who knows what it is? We don't know for sure what it is. But we know both of those countries don't want Iran to fall. So it stands to reason they're going to do something to help them defend themselves. All Iran has to do is not lose. All they have to do is remain viable. They can do combat math. Whatever Keen's shortfall is, they can. They can say, you have a limited number of missiles, especially offensively and defensive, because you've been given just buttloads of them to Israel since 2023. And of course, 4 years now in the Russia-Ukraine war, And we all know that you have given all you have to them, especially in the air defense interceptor missiles, and not enough. And Zelensky's crying for those every day because there's not enough to defend himself. We don't think that you can survive that long. So you keep firing all these missiles now, and you have this 10-day really strong period of time. That's not going to leave you much after that period. And we are stockpiled because they can bide their time. They have production facilities in there. So all they have to do is live through that first 10 days, and then they can start firing stuff in larger quantities that you can't stop. And that's not even talking about the Shahed drones. They had tens of thousands of those things. And they could just send wave upon wave, and you're just going to run out of Defender missiles, and then you have to reload. But it's going to take time because a lot of these things can't be refit at sea. You can't replace a lot of these at sea. You have to go to a bay. I think Diego Garcia is probably the closest place where you can safely get that done. So Iran understands that. So what I'm trying to convey to you is that you have Jack Keane leading this group here, 4-star general on the screen. People listen to that because they don't know. They don't know how combat power works. When they hear a 4-star general say that, they're going to believe him. They're not going to think he's lying. But if all of this sounds familiar to you, if it's something you're going, it just seems like, I don't know, like I've heard this kind of story before. It's because you have. On March 23rd, 2003, in a similar television experience, also just before a big war started, you had an anchor ask a defense official a very poignant question about what could be accomplished in Iraq.
What happens when our troops get to Baghdad? How concerned are you about a prolonged urban warfare?
Well, I'm the kind of person who's concerned about all the things and difficulties and problems that can occur, and we've spent a great deal of time thinking about them, analyzing them, preparing for them. I think that there's some truth to that, there is a possibility that as the coalition forces move from the south and from the north and from the west, that the degree of resistance could increase for a period. On the other hand, the outcome is clear. There is no question but that regime is through, that in fact it's over. And at some point, the people, if you put yourself in the shoes of the people in that country, they've been repressed by a vicious regime, a minority regime. The military forces, at some point, fearful of Saddam Hussein and his clique, at some point their fear of him will be much less than their fear of us. And those will begin to surrender.
Yeah, man, we know how that worked out, right? We know what a disaster that turned out to be. And he was so confident and so cocky about what was going to happen. And, I think it was the Vice President Dick Cheney was talking about how, they're basically going to throw flowers at our feet and they're going to welcome us as liberators and all this kind of stuff, right? All of that was promised. And that's not what happened. Didn't work out that way. Now, here's what you really need to understand. The kicker, not just look at those two videos, but understand what Jack Keane is saying right now. We have one aircraft carrier strike group, and we have a bunch of other air defense missiles that have been sent in and a lot of other air power on the ground. So land-based air power. So there's a lot of firepower there, but there's no ground troops there. None. Don Rumsfeld had about 300,000 total ground troops at his disposal. And we went in on the ground and in about a month actually defeated the regime. So you had a ground component to go along with a profound amount of air power, much, much more air power than anything that's in the Gulf right now. All together, there was a whole lot more air power that was there then. And we still underestimated them. We defeated them militarily in about a month. But then because of the insurgency that rose up afterwards, because you can't kill everybody, we know what happened with all of that. Jack Keane, Dan Raisin Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the guy that Trump is talking about, what this great military leader he is. How many ground troops does he have available? Nada. And you are talking about destroy the civilian and military leadership, like Don Rumsfeld successfully did. He did defeat their military and their regime. He did civilian and military leadership. You're going to destroy their defense industrial base. It's underground. Much of it is, as I've told you, all of their militias, all their militias that are spread through the four winds throughout that large country. Take down all of their rocket facilities so that they can't strike either Israel or the United States in the region. And you're going to deny them the ability to retaliate, and you're going to knock out the nuke program, which is odd because I thought President Trump said it was obliterated last year. So how's that going to be knocked out again if it's already taken out? Don't bother about asking that question. But do you see that? There's no ground army at all. There's just some rockets and missiles. And you think you're going to do what Don Rumsfeld did, and that somehow the end result of this iteration is going to be less than that 90-something million, somewhat million people in Iran are just going to be, cool, appreciate you guys destroying this regime. Now we're going to all live happily ever after, and everything's going to be fine. It is beyond absurd. It is dangerous. It is dangerous that you have a 4-star general telling all the American people and presumably giving advice to the president of the United States who may believe it, that we can do these things. And you see, we don't have a fraction of the combat power necessary. We don't have the sustainability in the air or in the sea to even maintain more than like a couple of weeks if you spread it out a little bit. And what happens if Iran is smart and says, we're going to have a minimal engagement here at the beginning. We're going to start attacking stuff because even with our full contingent, there's a lot of stuff that's going to get through because they've demonstrated that they can defeat the best of our air defenses. What happens, though, once we've shot our wad on that and that 2 weeks is out and they're not out? And what if they're smart and they had like an economy of forces, what's called the military parlance, to where you do just enough to keep things sustainable, to keep from losing here. And then when the other side has shot its wad and it doesn't have much left, then you bring out your big guns. And then you bring out your mass. Then you start bringing out all these shaheeds when all of a sudden there's nothing left to defend. You don't have enough air defense missiles even for drones, much less for the rest of their other good missiles. We could get annihilated. We could get crushed. Now, and I know that's something that nobody, hardly anyone in the West thinks is even possible. In the whole range of, here's the best case scenario, here's a worst case scenario, that's not even on the chart. This one would be somewhere off the screen here. But I'm telling you, it is possible. I don't know. Doug McGregor said it on this show. Alistair Crook last week said it on the show, and I'm repeating it here. I don't know for sure the capability of Iran. We have seen it in action, so we can have a pretty good idea that it's pretty robust, because they did penetrate the whole integrated air defense system of the Israeli side in June of last year, pretty powerfully. So we have physical evidence that they have some capabilities here. Now, President Trump just told you to trust him. They annihilated all the nuclear stuff, and that they've taken out a whole bunch of other stuff, and that we can, with impunity, go and take out all the air defenses. We'll see. But what we need to understand is that this scenario I just told you, it ain't off the chart, folks. It's right here. This is the worst case scenario, is that they're as good as what it appears they are, and that they're smart, as I suggest that they may be, and that they play their cards right, and they say, we're willing to suck down a lot of missiles, we're willing to suffer a lot of casualties and a lot of destruction for a couple of weeks. And then when you are at your weakest, I don't care how great your Navy, how great your Air Force, how great your missiles, how great your air defense missiles are, if you don't have enough of them to keep fighting, they're paperweights. And if you don't have ground forces, all they've got to do is survive in their bunkers. You don't have anybody to take them out. At least in Rumsfeld's position, he had armored divisions that could roll up the streets and eventually take Baghdad, so that they couldn't hide anywhere because you'd go after them. We don't have that now. So how are you going to do that expansive list with no army? It's absurd to the highest degree. The only thing that makes any sense is for President Trump not to fire one missile. Take the negotiated deal. Don't listen to Lindsey Graham. Don't listen to Jack Keane. Don't listen to all these warlusters who just have this this fixation to kill all the Iranian people, so that in their twisted minds, somehow they calculate that that would be good for Israel. It won't. I care about the people of Israel too. I care about the people of Iran. I care about all the people in this region. I care about especially the American military folks who will have targets on their backs if this goes down, and that you're not going to be able to defend them, whatever you may think. Some of those missiles are going to get through. If they got through in Israel, they will get through in our stuff too, because we don't even have as much capability as the Israeli side did. So don't go down that path. I just pray that the president will listen to sound, solid military understanding and reason, and not start something he can't finish. That's the key point. Don Rumsfeld was wrong back then, catastrophically so, and he had a whole lot more combat power than what's being mentioned here. And this armada can't do a fraction of what that one did in 2003. And I just hope President Trump gets that word, so he does not commit us to a course of action that we cannot win. We cannot succeed in. Let's hope we do. Let's hope that Arakshi was right, that this is the beginning. Today was the first of more rounds, and that President Trump can come to the conclusion that, you know what, let's just agree to something, just put a Band-Aid on this, a happy face, and just move on and live to fight another day and take whatever he can get, because apparently the Iranian side will make some negotiations and some concessions in the enrichment facilities, etc. So you can get something. There's no way that you can stop these warlusters, and they will not stop, by the way. Even if Trump, gives into reality here and does the sane, right thing that's America first, that protects our troops and our way of life by not starting a war that we can't finish, they won't stop. Let's just be clear on that. The likes of Jack Keane, the likes of Lindsey Graham, the likes of Rebecca Grant, Victoria Coates, et al. All of these folks, they will never stop. They'll just grit their teeth, and they'll push down hard, and they'll look for another opportunity. Can't do anything about that, but hopefully we can do something about this one right here to at least avoid this bullet here. We'll have to wait and see. We'll stay on top of it for you and let you know as things progress. We're going to be back with you again this afternoon at 2:30 p.m. With another show. So we'll look forward to seeing you then on the Daniel Davis Deep Dive. I don't try to talk you into buying gold or tell you how to run your stock portfolio, but there is a way you can help us. Subscribe, hit that like button, and share this with somebody you love.